All right, let's get into introduction. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. Go ahead and keep putting in the chat your information. We'll kind of bounce back to it during our Q&A. So I'm Angela Williams. I pretty much know all of you from emailing and talking back and forth throughout this enrollment period, but you know that I'm here for you. I'm the Assistant Director of Undergraduate Recruitment here at SOIC, so I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. Taylor, if you want to.
Yeah. And then, hey, everybody. My name is Taylor Dooley. I work with Angela. I'm a recruiter for the school. I know a lot of you, and I think a lot of you are in our group meet. If you didn't know, we have an official group meet for the class of 2024. I'm going to put the link in the chat in a bit. Feel free to join. And then you also all probably know me because I text you all the time. So if you get a text from me, I'm a real person. Feel free to text me back.
Yep.
I already said I'm playing Animal Crossing, but I'm also playing Zelda Breath of the Wild right now. It's a lot of fun.
I want to get back to that one.
It's good.
Travis, if you want to talk a little bit just about your background, education, what classes you teach.
Oh, I've got slides on that actually.
Never mind.
Can I take over the screen? Can I screen share?
I'll just hand it over. You guys, we are going to leave about 15 minutes for questions, but you can also type in the group chat as well if you think of things as we go through the presentation.
If any of you watch live streams, I've live streamed before, so quite often. I actually just finished a live stream teaching my students, so I know how to interact with the chat as you come up with questions. So feel free to use that chat. My eyes will be on it. Justin, you're from Lapel. Heck yeah, Persona 5 Royal. I'm moving back to Persona 4 right now. I hear it's really good. If I had not beaten Persona 5, I'd be on Royal right now for sure, but I don't know if I have 120 hours. Let's see if I can get that screen share going. Cool. Hey, the chat went away. Give me a second here. I'll go on to the next slide though. Bonus points to anybody who recognizes that image I have there. How do I get chat back? This is very frustrating.
You have to click chat at the bottom, then it pops up as a new window.
Ah, there we go. Thank you. Someone said something in chat. There we go. Disappeared when I did screen share. Cool. So who am I? I'm a game development instructor at IUPUI, actually. So I assume many of you here are interested in game development. Is that sort of the sub-community that we have here, Angela?
Yes.
Is game developers. Great. So you're going to have me sort of some programming classes in the beginning, and then you'll hit me for the intermediate game development classes and some virtual worlds and psychology classes that are really fun. I have a Master of Science from Purdue University, actually. I studied computer graphics technology there, and I also studied applied computer graphics technology, was the advanced version. My original sort of skill set was Adobe Flash. So if anybody remembers Adobe Flash, I was good at that before it sort of died. I've moved on to Unity 3D as sort of my game engine of choice, so I've dabbled in other ones also. Heck yeah, Adobe Flash. ActionScript 3 is still my favorite language. I'm also a PhD candidate, so I told you I mentioned that I live streamed before, so I actually study live streaming. Among other things, I actually study game developers. It's sort of my research interests. I mentioned that I played Animal Crossing. I'm also an OK Overwatch player if anybody plays Overwatch. Cool. I'm not a great visual spatial sort of person, so I'm running into my microphone here. Key things here also, I organize a local game development group here called Indy Indies. Rocket League sounds really fun, Michael, by the way. I'm not good at it. I've only played a few matches. I organize this group called Indy Indies. That's sort of like a combined showcase get-together of local game developers. We're actually going to have an event online in July. I'll mention that here later on. I'm sort of known for my scarves. I now have one scarf per day of the week. I'm trying not to buy more, but I probably will. That particular scarf there, it's sort of hard to read, but it's a Celeste scarf. So if anybody's played the game Celeste, I have a Celeste scarf, and I have some other really geeky scarves I like to wear around. My favorite one is a Doctor Who scarf, but that's just me. So what do I teach here at IUPUI? You can see up there, there's a GIF. That was a game that I started making during our extended spring break, just to sort of stay current on the technology and see what I can do. I was originally hired actually to teach web design and development. That was my original sort of space. But over time, I slowly filtered into game development instead. And by the way, all the content you see on that GIF I've made, so nothing there is pre-built assets. It was me sort of learning all those workflows. So I teach a lot of that still. My introductory classes are a lot of like, how do you design for the web? How do you make for the web? HTML5, JavaScript, all that fun stuff. I also teach some human factors and social sciences because I find that stuff super fascinating. Like at a certain point, you won't worry about your tech skills. It's sort of the philosophy of what you can do with your tech skills that become more interesting. I love multiplayer games, and I love the way that we can bring people together through multiplayer games. It's always been fascinating to me. And I also teach an augmented reality class, which was one of the focuses of my master's thesis back at Purdue University. And I'm slowly building that one out again. It's my first time teaching it fully. It was actually one of the reasons why I was in making this stuff here. So all those models you see there was me sort of getting my feet wet again in Blender, because augmented reality is partially programming, but also partially sort of the creation of these 3D models. So I'm kind of all over the place, which is a really good definition of sort of how I live my life. What am I talking about today? What are the things that I was asked to talk about today? So I'm sort of basing this off of. I took this image down here from our website. This is an image from the canal, which is not a very far walk away from our building, and is a beautiful walk, especially if you're walking at 7 a.m. in the morning, like I do sometimes when I get to school. I think this is a sunset rather than a sunrise, however, but it's still a really beautiful walk. Go head to the website and see the rest of it. It's a really nice one. I was going to briefly talk about what goes into game development, and then I wanted to talk about what our particular school offers you, game developers, where those skills can take you. And then I was going to talk more about sort of what our school particularly is doing, and what's happening within Indianapolis to sort of support the game development field. This is an image actually from my intermediate class. My intermediate game development class is called Puck Dungeon. I totally adore this game. It's such a great game. It's a roguelike, but you sort of like chuck these characters around. So I'm excited for that. So there's a lot that goes into making games. I try to list out some of the things that you can choose to specialize in when you come into here. And specialization is essentially you take whatever you learn in class and then you decide to go deep on those particular topics, usually with the guidance of a professor, but not just regurgitating what the professor gives to you. Things that this school supports really well are things like concept art and background painting. You have to be really quick at this. You have to be very iterative, taking feedback and building upon it. It's very high skill and it's very difficult to get into. But we have classes in it, and we have a lot of very talented students in this area. We teach 3D modeling. So all those things, even the ones that I have back here, right? And making those things, I'm really bad at it. The instructors in that area are really good at teaching you how to do 3D modeling. We teach 3D rigging and animation, great stuff. I've highlighted here sort of the two things that I'm sort of okay at, which is 2D animation, like Disney, but I don't know if better, but like Disney. So 2D animation, we do a lot of that. And in my games classes, I oftentimes sort of teach those fundamentals because it's not emphasized in our Unreal Engine classes. And gameplay programming. This is the thing that I like to do. I like to make things interactive and responsive. I like to make things bounce when you click on them, make noises when they die. I like to make things chase you around. Like those are fun interactions to do. I love to make particle systems. Explosions are always fun to make. What else might you wind up doing when you come into this class? You might be doing some audio engineering, which is awesome. I have a student who just graduated in the winter. His name is Noel Keith, but his handle is Knockbient, and he does wonderful soundtrack work and a lot of like Foley and sound effect work. So you might be doing some of that stuff and contributing that to a game. You might be doing storytelling. So you might be creating interactive tools to tell stories. Usually, I have a lot of students that want to become storytellers, and I'll get this caveat real fast. You got to be a good storyteller, which usually means you're working on becoming a published author in addition to working in games. And then finally, project management or producer. This is a really overlooked skill set, but what can people get, like making sure people get their stuff done. It's crucial. It's crucial in the games industry, and it's usually one that people overlook. Marketing also goes in there, but let's move on. So I wanted to briefly talk about, why do I mention this? Well, when you come into the game development track here at IUPUI, we're gonna require that you pick a side. You can't just do game development. So we're gonna require that you either move into 3D content creation or you become a programmer or a game programmer. Making it through not doing one of these things is going to be extremely difficult, and you'll probably be a little bit less pleased with the games that you're making if you try to not go on one of these paths. We've had students go that way, and by the end, they come out with a weak portfolio because they decided not to specialize. I do, however, have students who have dual specialized, and they're fairly decent 3D content creators, and they're amazing programmers, and I love them because that's exactly the type of person I would like to be one day. I'm not right now. So you're gonna have to be one of those things. This, by the way, is student work from a recent capstone. So that 3D model on the left is by Elsie, wonderful, wonderful person, super engaged. And then on the left, this is actually a video game set to music. So it's sort of like, I don't know, a musical is the best way to put it. It's super beautiful by Drennan Dooms. I've got links to these later on also. I've got this slide, but I'm going to skip past it because I think I'm already sort of eating up a lot of time here. In general, if you want to be a storyteller, game designer, awesome. You're just going to have to pick a side still, because we want to make sure that while you're pursuing that dream, you're also making good money. And usually that means that you need that other skill set. And we make sure that you have a skill set to make you money even while you're trying to become a game designer or a storyteller. So what are some of the classes that we offer you here at IUPUI? This image on the right, which is attracting my eye much more than the classes that I have on the left, is an image from a game series we did for a couple of years that was an alternate reality game at conferences. So you go to these conferences, we have people dressed up in cosplay and acting out that like the Etheria is trying to break through and you had to stop Etheria from returning. Or bring magic back. Actually wasn't heavily involved in this last iteration of it. But there was large group projects where we're crafting all these different video games. That's by A.G. Shannon, beautiful artist, right? Wonderful artist. Classes we offer, creature design, great class. It's taught by Professor Matthew Powers, if you've run into him before. Very high energy, very passionate about this. The history of video games, great classes also to sort of learn the history of video games from before even them being games or video games. So we're going back to ancient times, all the way up to, we get usually to about the 1990s, and then the history of video games too picks up from that area. Psychology of games, like what are the effect of games on players? Rad. My particular classes are virtual world design and development and augmented reality. So virtual worlds, think like World of Warcraft and Overwatchy sort of stuff. We then have sort of our core set of classes you need to go through, which is intro, intermediate, and advanced game development. And this sort of gets you your skills inside the software packages and also collaborating with teammates. I'm going to show you work from intermediate here later on, because it's the class that I particularly teach. It is a brutal class in some ways, and it's true to the gaming industry in those ways also. We also have a production class from which Return of Etheria came out. It's very professionally oriented. Tools. I mention these only right now because if you're coming in as our students, I don't want you to wait to start learning these tools. If you're excited about them, they are free. Download them, watch some YouTube videos, get good at them. I spent this entire morning teaching myself some Blender because it was interesting and I wanted to learn Blender. If I want to make games, Unity 3D is my software package. Matthew Powers teaches Unreal Engine. The 3D students use a lot of Unreal Engine also. Maybe at some point I'll move from Unity 3D, but I hope not, because I don't want to learn another engine. I'm really tired of learning things. If you want to learn how to make 3D stuff, you want to head into Maya or Blender. Maya is free for students, so I've included the link here that will get you access once you have a .edu address. You'll be able to use the tools the professionals use every day, download, install into your computer if you've got something capable of running it. By the way, if if you're a media arts and science student, it is a worthwhile investment to chunk down that money and buy a computer that can do that heavy lifting. I have students that try not to, and I understand if you've got those financial situations, but if you're like, do I spend a little bit more on a computer, a little bit less, just spend a little bit more. It's going to serve you well in the long run. Blender is the 3D software package I use, and I'm willing to bet that by the time you graduate, Godot is going to be a serious contender in the game engine software stuff. What does the school offer to you? What are the resources that they have for you? Well, we have virtual reality headsets everywhere. We used to have them just sort of like laying around in the my gosh, I haven't been in them for so long, in the classrooms. They just sort of used to be sitting there in the classrooms. But students didn't use them that much, and I don't know why. They're actually really fun. So we have them, just ask. They're super fun. We have Cintiq tablets. These are screens that you can draw on for art production. We'll be getting motion capture soon. And of course, we have computers that can run game engines at a very high level. We also have sound studios and all sorts of great video equipment also that you can capture for your folio work and any sort of video work you need. So when it comes to making games, we have the best technology you could ever need. It's there. You can use it. Cool. So I think I've given a decent introduction there. If you guys got questions, you guys and gals, if you all have questions, again, you can drop them in chat. I'm easily distracted. My students like to distract me in class, but easily distracted. But I'm going to talk a little bit now about student work, and this will easily distract me too. This image back here is actually from a game called Stranger that came out of my intermediate game development class last year. I love this game because it's a collaboration between my intermediate game development class and the 3D modeling class. So a lot of the models you see here from that class, and then my game developer sort of learned how to do it. I'm going to be talking about two things. I'm going to talk about my intermediate game development work and a little bit about my capstone work. 350, okay. Intermediate game development class is a class that I teach in the spring. I run it like real game dev. So games get canceled in this class, and they get canceled early and quickly sometimes. So I have friends in the game development industry that have worked on games for upwards of 2 years. They can't tell me a word about what they were working on because all of it was under non-disclosure. And when they took the game to the producer said, this isn't going to make enough money. Your game is canceled. It's never going to see the light of day. So we run it like real game dev. There's a chance that ideas die and the work and effort, unfortunately, goes nowhere. And that you still learn from that, even though the game doesn't get released. I run it with teams of programmers and artists, so it's actually focused on teamwork. And we talk specifically about how do you work on a team rather than just assume that you can. And then submissions go on to itch.io or itch.io's Game Jam entries. I've done it for the past 2 years as Game Jam entries. Let me pull some of these up here real fast. So can someone verify that it's still sharing the screen? I don't know if it's sharing my thing or... Yeah. Okay, cool. So let me actually pull up itch.io, by the way, for those of you who've never seen itch.io before. itch.io is sort of the indie game developers' game release site of choice. These are all games that people have made. They're not AAA. Jet Lancer, by the way, is totally rad. This game is so cool. I need to finally actually play it. It looks like Lufros from... Oh, the game looks so cool. I really need to buy that game. But these are all games that indies have made that you could make too if you wanted to put in the time and effort and release on the itch. Itch is great because its revenue share is, I think, 100% to the developer unless they change it. It's crazy. Anyway, so I run this as Game Jam. So every single student makes a build of their game and releases onto the website, and they also do the marketing for it. So of course you can see Stranger is here. Stranger probably had their best website, so we're going to go here. And you can see the entire website is built for this game. We have the title for it. We have the marketing lingo for it. We've got graphics from the game. This particular one's based on time loops. I don't know if I'm going to pull this one up just because it actually takes some time to get into. The intro for it's great. It starts as a black screen, and you see each of these lights turn on. They go like choo, choo, choo as they turn on. It's really good. And then this one, the student was still learning how to do some save states, which is really good for an intermediate class. And so it just had some things that it ran into. I like Stranger, but I actually think that this semester went really well. Can I get that to open, please? Yes. Okay, so this semester I'm your teachers become better teachers also, and so I became a better teacher. So many of these games actually have videos associated with them, I think, maybe. This one's really fun. Let's download Outer Space Build and just take a look real fast. And let's download Puck Dungeon too, because I really like Puck Dungeon. So I'm going to go ahead and run a couple of these games, and I'm going to show you some of my Capstone student games in a second too. All those students being students, it's just called animationtest.exe. And you can still see my screen, correct? You can't hear the video, okay. Cool, so let's go ahead and play one of these games. So this one's about collecting asteroids. This is a 2-player game, so I'm gonna be really bad at it, but I loved the interaction here. The students in this one, what you see is the end result of some of these games. Oh, I made it to one. What you see in some of these games, unfortunately, isn't always, some of their work doesn't show up. So here we're seeing that, like, okay, cool, that particle system isn't finished. They had done a lot of iteration in the beginning. They actually had this thing, they had this thing, there was a mechanic in the game for a while that had a happiness meter, a sadness meter. So the further the two otters got away from each other, the sadder they got and the less they could move. And so they were playing around with that idea for a while, and it just didn't turn out the way they wanted it to. But it was cool that they were playing with that particular concept. Let's also try Puck Dungeon, because I love, this was definitely like a super group in terms of what they had. So Puck Dungeon, if anybody's ever played a roguelike, I don't play a lot of roguelikes. It's sort of like you're making these slow choices over time. I love that. The axe really shouldn't morph like that, but it also looks really good that it morphs like that. I'm gonna go ahead and move this guy. When he hits, he deals damage, and I think he has a certain number of moves before his turn's over. Yeah. Let's move the mage. Mage barely moves at all. Is he a mage or is he a rogue? Yeah, he's a mage. Well, shit, I hurt my guy. Let's see if we can get here. Oh, she can still fire? No. All right, we're gonna end her turn then. All right, so now she can shoot. So this was another example of sort of the outcome of this particular team. Nice. They went through this process over the series of many weeks of like developing, cool, what does it feel like if I move a puck around inside the dungeon? How do I learn how to do some of the sprite work that I've never done before? What are the resources that do that? Where do I find things that are examples of good quality sprite like backgrounds? And they pulled it all together into this thing. They did really good work here in terms of sort of learning to engage with the design and also to engage with the process of finding their own resources. So one of the things I'm trying to teach in this class isn't total tech skill, but to learn to use the tech skills that you have to develop further ability later on. All right, so let's get out of here. Alt F4. Those are two examples of games that have come out of my class. You'll see that many of them, this one's actually in, Midnight Movie Mayhem never submitted the right link to me, which is annoying because it's actually in 3D. You'll see that many of them are in 2D because I tend to emphasize 2D in my classes. I find it more approachable mathematically. So a lot of students wind up doing it, and I don't know. I'm going to try to get it to more 3D in the future. Let's take a look at a couple of Capstone student work. So that was my intermediate class. Those are students who are sort of shaken up in a team format and just thrown at projects and expected to learn how to learn. Here's a couple of Capstone student work. Lab Runner is really good. It actually took a award and a show last year, Vector Conference, and thankfully he listened to me and got a video up. So we're gonna watch a little bit of the video from Lab Runner. You guys can't hear the audio. I don't know if they did great work on the audio. So you get this grappling hook here, and then you use this grappling hook to maneuver throughout your game space. So everything you see here is done inside of Unreal Engine. The student actually spent about a year prototyping this. So he made another version of this game first. Oh my gosh, I love those little things that exist down there. You get hurt when you go down there and you can just barely see those little creatures. Oh, they're creepy. So he made a version of this game and he prototyped it as an infinite runner, and it just wasn't working. So he switched this grappling hook mechanic and he started playing around with this idea of having puzzles, and later on it becomes a puzzle and a shooter. I don't know if he has any of the, yeah, see he picks up this gun later on. All the textures in this game are made by him. All the animations, all the interactions were made by him. We took this to a local game developers conference. It took Best in Show. I'm very proud of the work that he did. So that one is Lab Runner. You can actually find this on itch. You can download it. It's called LabRunner.7z because that's what I wanted to name it. Lumiette, this one won a couple of awards also and got a lot of attention for a while until Ben decided he just didn't want to develop anymore. Lumiette is in the tradition of a shoot 'em up, a shmup, right? A bullet hell sort of genre, but it's a twin stick version of that. Real Doom vibes, right, Mike, from the last game. That student had come in, he had liked to mod Quake games, I think, so he'd been modding a lot of video games for a while. Lumiette here is in a twin stick shooter, so you can actually kind of control the direction that you're shooting in. And Ben probably spent about 8 months working on this game on and off. We took this game to the Game Developers Conference last year and showed it off and got some good feedback and response to it also. We also have taken it to local showcases, one at a local arcade called Tappers, and got a lot of people playing it and having a lot of fun with it there too. So that one's Lumiette. This was my Capstone student about a year ago. He now works at a company called Vision 3 doing virtual reality work and augmented reality work. So a lot of the skills that you learned on Lumiette, you just took to a different space. One more. This ironically was not his capstone. This was from Advanced Game Design. And this is called Hammy Farming. Let's just go find a YouTube video for this one because the students learned how to do this. Hammy farming is about being a hamster and a hamster ball that runs a farm. So you're in this hamster ball. You have to go from place to place. The little hamster tubes will take you. Brian Dugan did a really good job on this game. You get these different farming tools, and then you go sort of like tenure crops. I'm so mad he never finished this game. You tend your crops, you later plant stuff in those crops. Come on, I believe in you. And the cool thing about Hammy farming is as this slowly loads, this is something that Brian started over the summer. So over the summer, I recall seeing him and sharing a couple of images of him sort of playing around with this idea of a person in a hamster ball, and he had ragdoll physics for a while, so the hamster would just like roll around and around in the hamster ball. Oh my god, oh, it's so good. This game is so good. So we've taken this to a couple places too. We were going to take this game to GDC also, the Game Developers Conference, and show it off to game developers, but that conference was canceled this year, so maybe it'll be there next year. We'll see. But it was something that he played with over time during summer break. So even like I'm playing around with Blender over summer break, like, dude, this is media, man. It's just fun to play with. Like, it's not hard stuff like advanced nuclear physics calculations. So some people like to play with that too. So let's Hammy farming. How are we doing on time? Great. So it's a couple of games that we have made that I particularly enjoy. We do have other games that are a slightly higher fidelity. I know a lot of the things I've shown you are sort of cartoony. You've got that one Doom vibes thing. Let me actually pull up one quick example that was not meant to be part of this presentation, but I think will sort of show where we could take this if we wanted to, and is where I'm trying to take this. So where are my discussions on the face space? I'm going to share with you a portfolio from one of our 3D students. Her name is Sylvia Lawson. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Vilches. This is stuff that we can do in Unreal Engine now. So this is stuff that we can do in real time in Unreal Engine. The difference in interaction between what you saw in Hammy Farming and what you see here in terms of programming is pretty much zero. It's just the difference in rendering. So if we brought our best 3D students in with our best programmers, we could make games to look like this. We can make games to look like this. It's just a matter of getting you all together in one room and letting you go wild. But we could make games that look this amazing easily. Just plop you into Unreal Engine and have you go ham. Anyway, cool. So that's some student work in that space. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about what we've got happening in Indianapolis right now. So I wanted to drop a link on you, even if you, wherever you go in life, if you're coming back. I've curated this list right now. It's called indiegrowngames.com. It just sort of lists out everything that's happening here in the Indianapolis area. So we have an Unreal Engine meetup group. We have the group that I'm sort of like heaviest involved with, which is just the Indianapolis game developers. Down in Bloomington, there's a night called Big Night, which is their Bloomington indie games people. There's also people who do board games and tabletop games. And then my sort of other initiative here. So if you ever sort of like, hey, cool, what's happening in the game development space in Indianapolis and Indiana? indiegrowngames.com is your URL to get to. I mentioned briefly the Unreal Engine's user group. They meet, not weekly, they meet once monthly to discuss Unreal Engine technology. They're making a really cool game right now called West Rogue, which does not have a website yet, so I can't show you anything because I don't have any good things. I just know they have it because they take it out to showcases all the time. I'm good friends with these people, and in fact, a lot of times we host their meetups in the school building. So they're actually on the same floor where you are taking classes. So you can easily go meet with people from the local tech industry. Oftentimes military people are coming out there. They use it to make training software. So Unreal Indy, they've got their own website also. This is the group that I'm heavily involved in, the Indiana Game Developers Group. This is a picture from Global Game Jam I'm going to talk about in a second. I mean, it's on and off. It's got some energy sometimes and sometimes it doesn't, but they're great people. I love them. This is, I'll talk about that in a second. And then something that I'm running, Indy Indies, the local showcase of regionally made games. I put it on for fun, fun in air quotes. We've actually had people from 4 different states come here. We've had people drive all the way down from Minnesota one time to show their game at Indy Indies. So it's actually a really good networking opportunity. One of the things I find really important for game developers is just to be around your people, like large amounts of game developers, and you start getting really fired up about game development in a way that you wouldn't otherwise sometimes when you're sort of secluded in your own house. So that's why I put these shows on, is like say like, hey, we're here. There's people that actually love what we're doing. The next one's going to be online. So originally I was going to do one in the summer, but well, that's not a good thing to do right now. So it's going to be online. I have a website there, indiegrowngames.com/IIS2020, or you can check out our Twitter feed, which will be sporadically updated. I've got a video here from one of our last events, but this is probably not going to work. Well, that does nothing for me, Twitter. Whatever. We'll just skip over that video then. Indy Indies, game jams. So we're almost there. Cool. Game jams. They're condensed creation events. Most of my students who attend them come away having learned a lot. And what I mean by condensed creation events is the one that I put on, we start Friday at 5 p.m. and we go for 2 days. So from Friday until Sunday at 5 p.m., we make games. They are a great way to network because you're making games with other game developers to prototype game ideas you have. And I'll tell you what, game developers actually just enjoy making games. It's hard work, but it's fun work, right? There's sort of two big ones out there. Ludum Dare is one. Global Game Jam is one of the biggest ones in the world. My favorite one that I've been on twice, and I was going to go on a third one this year, but it got canceled, is Train Jam. You get on a train in Chicago, and you ride it to San Francisco. It's 72 or 52 hours of game development. It's so fun. It's super, super enjoyable. I actually get students tickets for my students. So I get three tickets for my students, and they get to go for a reduced rate, and then a 10 GDC for a reduced rate also. There's actually more. So if you're bored and you want to join a game jam, and if you never have before, remember that website I showed you, Itch.io? Here's all currently running game jams. Sushi Dev. There's a lot. There's always a chance to join a game jam. So good summer work to do is join some game jams at your level and just have fun making games. Global Game Jam, real briefly, I put this on every single year at IUPUI. 40 hours to make games, I told you. I've always participated, actually. I've been doing this for about 5 to 6 years now. Some of my most cherished memories, actually, are global game jams and game jams in general. This last year was one that I particularly enjoyed. I had people come in from other states. I had sponsors. We all ate pizza. You can see some people have t-shirts with our school name on it. Love all these goofballs. They went out to Burger King. They were wearing these hats upside down sometimes. Some great games came out of it. I'm pushing the time. I know. I'm sorry. Some great games came out of it. Let's say CL Games. We had 38 people come out. There's a few more. Giraffics is so good. I love Giraffics. Patch the Universe was one of our student teams. That one's mine. You make a farm that plays music. That one's also really good. I'm going to pull these up because they had a graphics issue with them. Giraffics, you eat fruit and your neck gets longer, and so you have to like slowly navigate around and not crush things as you're fixing up the space. And then Patch the Universe, you're riding this duct tape motorcycle down the street, fixing up all these splatches with duct tape. That one was a really fun game to play. So all these assets you see here, this entire game was programmed from scratch by that student team there. Great people. Cool. Real briefly, regional events. They're a bit further away, but worth attending. Why? Networking equals connections. Connections equal jobs. Jobs equal your dream job. I do what I can through Indy Indies, through Global Game Jam. I will tell you about these in my classes too. VectorComp, GDEX, PixelPop, and BitBash are all great nearby places that are within 4 hours driving distance of us that are totally worth your time and effort. Many of them have volunteer opportunities, which means you can go there for free. And usually the volunteers are good opportunities for networking also. These ones are regional. The big one is Game Developers Conference, which takes a little bit more money getting out to. So I usually don't recommend that until you get up to like your junior, senior level. All of these are great. All of these are great. I know all the people who run them too. They're all wonderful people. So please get out to them when they restart. Right now they're all online. PixelPop just announced they're going online. And I wanted to close real quickly with this quote. If you got to ask, you'll never know, by Louis Armstrong. And sort of the way that I read this is like, and he was responding like, what is jazz? And in my mind, like, if you some things you just don't learn until you learn it in the doing. So when it comes to game development, that's one of the things is that like, if you aren't doing, you're not learning that thing, and you can get started doing right now. So go ahead and get started doing. All right, that's the end for me. Thank you. I'm sorry, did I go over? I think I went over.
No, you're literally perfect on time.
Sweet, good.
15, and we're gonna leave about 15 minutes for questions. So I hope that you guys have some questions. Throw them in the chat box.
They're all playing Animal Crossing right now.
Do you have?
I get it.
So while they're coming up with questions, can you give them some advice of what they could do this summer to prepare?
Yeah, my recommendation is figure out something that you're slightly interested in, and just go ahead and download that program and start playing around with it. Every single one of these programs have good tutorial systems, or good sets of tutorials online. So I think I'm still sharing my screen, right? So for instance, if I were to hop onto YouTube and I wanted to learn how to do Blender, which is one that I've been slowly teaching myself, I just put in like Blender tutorial and I would do 2.8. So I have the new system. And this is actually one that I assign in my classes. Blender Guru here, 100% free, online. Good grief. He teaches you how to make a donut, which looks really boring, but well, actually, I think it looks super delicious. But in teaching you how to make a donut, you learn how to make geometry, manipulate geometry, use particle systems, what a material is, how to manipulate aspects of a material. What else? How to set up lighting, how to set up rendering, how to do animation. You could, by the time you walk into your first 3D class, already be an expert at that class, and then use that class and every single assignment in that class not as a chance to learn the software, but rather get good at the software, right? Your entire time in that school is like, I'm not worrying about the A now. I'm worrying about making something that's going to attract the attention of an employer, and really push myself. You can learn Blender right now, and I think you should. Or you can learn Maya right now, right? I would hop in here and say Maya tutorial, and learn Maya. I literally lost like 2.5 hours this morning learning how to do something in Blender because it was just fun. I was following along with this tutorial. So I went to this tutorial, I made this crazy animation at the end. I made a variation of this animation, but I made this crazy animation at the end. You can see, by the way, this tutorial is only 10 minutes long. And I had a lot of fun following on with this. So like, okay, cool. It's not exactly playing Animal Crossing or whatever, but I'm still learning this. This guy has so many fun tutorials also. Like this one also looks really cool. That's neat, right? And it's all of 10 minutes long or 20 minutes long, and you can learn how to do that. Maya, Unreal Engine actually has a site for this, so Unreal Engine Learning. So if you want to get good at sort of the biggest, beefiest game creation package out there, cool. Go look up Unreal Engine Learning and just start learning and start playing around with it. There's a lot to learn, and if you come into your game development classes already like not being confused by what button does what in the technology, but rather being able to say like, well, what can I actually do with the technology now that I'm not just fumbling over some of the user interface? That's a good place to be in. The first thing you launch up in Unreal Engine, like the first thing you go into, it gives you this character, you run around and you shoot like foam balls at things, and you can like shoot things over, and then you can slowly modify from there. So it's a really good starting place. And again, it's fun. It's fun to begin with. It's fun to start playing around with that. Unity has the same thing. So like I point people to Unity's learning site because Unity is my particular software package of choice. There's a learning site here for learners, learn more. Theirs is a little bit more confusing. I actually don't like their site because they're trying to make money off of it. So there is like a student plan stuff. You can also find tutorials by going to YouTube and saying Unity tutorials. So you can do it for any of these things, right? For any of these things. The last thing that I might recommend is finding a community that does the stuff, that's excited about the stuff. So, oh my gosh, this is dangerous. Well, I have a curated Twitter feed. So I have a Twitter feed that's just a bunch of game developers. And so I sort of know what's going on in the game development world. And slowly over time, I've learned how to do certain things in game development just by seeing that feed. So I've learned animation tricks. I've learned things to do in Unity. I've learned new tools and techniques just by sort of passively monitoring that feed. So establishing that passive social network and beginning to learn how to engage in that group will help you establish that identity as a game developer. Mike Lewis, you talked about choosing your field in the beginning. What were the different fields? So broad strokes, I would say either programmer or 3D artist. These are very broad strokes, but these are sort of the two paths that I expect someone coming into my intermediate game development class to be able to do. I either expect you to be able to produce 3D content inside of Maya, or usually Maya, and then get that 3D content into a game engine, or I expect you to be able to write the code to bring that to life. The most powerful of them all, however, and the people who are the scariest and the most employable are the people who can do both. You can see that like I teach a lot of programming classes, but here I am doing Blender tutorials because now I know both halves of the puzzle. I know how to make it come to life, and I also know the fundamentals at the very least of doing it. That's the type of person I am. It also means that I'm not the best programmer, nor am I the best at anything in 3D. I'm not the best animator. I'm not the best organic modeler. I'm not the best solid state modeler. I'm not the best motion graphics artist. I'm not good at any of those things. But I'm really powerful because I can come up with a concept. I can create the assets for the concept. I can make that concept interactive, and I can put that in front of someone else. And that is a very employable skill set. Someone like that in the game development field is usually called a technical designer. It's a very particular skill set where you're able to write code that manipulates things inside the game, that usually help other designers get their work done and helps other artists get their work done. There's actually another field that people have been creating recently, which is technical artist is that term. Technical designer is someone who writes tools and scripts to make the game designers process better. So they'll make tools and scripts to make balancing easier. They'll make tools and scripts to make level layout easier. All that kind of stuff is another technical field where you have to know a bit of game design to be able to write the tools because you have to speak their language, but you also have to know how to program to get it done. Usually our students that can write code also find better fallback employability. Though Zeb and Albert have been doing a great job with placing their students recently. But usually they're students that they're oftentimes excited about are like, this dude can model like a pro, and he can also write some pretty decent code to make it come to life. Coding in Unreal Engine, by the way, is not like the stuff that I write. It actually looks a lot more like what you're seeing there. You do this thing called blueprinting. Blueprints, Unreal Engine. So instead of writing out text, you connect nodes together like this. A lot of people take to that. A lot of people take to that for sure.
Travis, I have a question. So
Yeah.
how do you think, what's the best way for students to figure that out? Like which way to go?
Oh, this is a good point. A really good point. So when I started at Indiana University, when I started at Purdue, I wanted to become a concept artist. So I actually minored in art and design. And I was really focusing on my painting. And I think at some point, I sort of figured two things out as I was working on it. Like I was painting things, and I was just getting increasingly frustrated with what I was painting. I wasn't enjoying it. And then I was writing some coding, or I was taking some coding classes, and I was like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this. Like this stuff isn't hard at all for me. I think that way. So that helped me figure it out. And all of you are going to have to take some combination of those things as you go through here. You're going to have to take a technical class early on. It's an I-210 class. You're also going to have to take some artistic classes early on. And you'll figure out sort of, do I think in one way or the other, and which one seems to call to me a little bit? I would also recommend just sitting down and doing a little bit of it outside of the scope of class and finding a context outside the scope of class that engages you. Because classes are sort of, we have learning goals in the classes, and we have to stick to them, and we have to stick to certain areas in which they work, right? So I can choose a class, and I try to choose something that I think will work for about 60 to 80% of the students, but I know that about 20% of them may be motivated by the content. I'm doing cool graphical stuff, and they want to do data viz. Sorry, I'm not teaching a data viz class. So if you come to it and you're like, well, I didn't really like programming in that context, let me try it out in Unreal Engine. Or, well, I tried art here, but let me try it in this different context. Or maybe I'll try animation, or maybe I'll try this other thing. I would spend a bit of your summer, definitely your first semester, and probably a little bit of your second semester dabbling a little bit, and then really figuring it out. I know that you have to declare pretty quickly by your sophomore year, correct? So you have to declare by your sophomore year, but that first semester is a year for truly exploring and being sort of open to what the different areas are talking to you. And there's nothing to say that in the end, you don't wind up doing a little bit of both in the end, but you going heavy and hard in one is good to get the high level skill that's needed by employers in the future.
And just also to make something else clear, you know, you have faculty like Travis to help you with that, but you'll also have your advisor, your dedicated advisor that you can go to say, I've chosen this route. I want to do more of the programming side. And then they're going to help make sure you get the classes that you need.
Cool. I'm not good at it. What if you have a decent idea of what you want to do as a field? Great. What do you want to do, Maddie? But if you have a decent idea, that's great. I still am going to push you to one or the other. And so that's really close to the area that I put you towards. If you want to do storytelling, cool. I would recommend that you pick up, I don't know exactly, one of the two sides still and use that as an addition to what you're doing while still doing storytelling. You can still see my screen, correct? Have you ever used this tool yet, Maddie? Twinery? You should. You should definitely go make some stories in Twinery. There are communities that actually use Twine to tell stories. And there are Twine games that have won awards, like game development awards. There are Twine games that have made their creators a fair bit of money also. So you can actually monetize the games that you've made on Twine. These are sort of like making a choose your own adventure. The reason why I would want you to do this is that this puts you in front of tools that look sort of like, this is Twine 1.4, there's a new one that's 2.0, that looks sort of like what professionals use. So a lot of storytelling in game development is actually this flow charting sort of stuff also. So like, okay, when you do this, this particular thing happens, which leads to this thing, which leads to that particular thing, right? You're making these interactive stories. Even if it's just dialogue systems. There are people who legit, when you're writing stories, will use Excel for story writing. And it looks awful, but it works, right? And so you've got like character, dialogue 1, and maybe like character 2, and then dialogue 2. And the reason why is that this stuff that gets written here then gets translated. If you're working for larger games, right? It gets translated into English, Spanish, French, German, whatever, right? On down the line. And they need a spreadsheet of that so they can figure out, have we translated every single line of text in this game into its correlating text in another language. So Twinery is great. I really think that you should start on it over the summer so that when you come into the class, you've used this. There's other fields that use particularly these things as their input dialogue systems. Another one would be RenPy. RenPy's a little bit more advanced, but if you've ever done visual novels before, there are these games have won tons of awards. You can use these to make visual novels, make money off the visual novels. Also very easy to get started as a storyteller. I've seen students go from not knowing the technology at all to making their first interactive game within 2 hours. And by students, I mean high schoolers. I mean like early high schoolers. So this is a very approachable thing. You could be making your first games and uploading to itch.io by the end of the summer easily.
Awesome. Okay, we've got about 2 more minutes. Do we have any more questions for Travis? Any other or admissions questions or anything for us before we wrap this up? Okay. Make sure you guys, if you haven't already, join our group Me. It's fairly new, so Taylor has included that link in the chat. And just thank you all so much for being here. And you definitely know where to reach us. So if you have questions, we will be here.
Cool. Thank you all for coming by. I appreciate you giving me your time.
Thanks, guys.